we were angry because information about the virus should have been told to us earlier and a lot sooner. People knew it was happening, and people did not want to talk about it. Many Americans are saying the exact same thing about you, that you should have warned them the virus was spreading like wildfire through the month of February instead of holding rallies with thousands of people. Why did you wait so long to warn them?
Who are you with?
And why did you not have social distancing until March 16th?
Who are you with?
I'm Weijia Jiang with CBS News.
So, if you look at what I did in terms of cutting off or banning China from coming in.
Chinese nationals. But by the way, not Americans who are also coming from China.
Nice and easy. Just relax. We cut it off. People were amazed. These gentlemen, everybody was amazed that I did it. We had 21 people in a room. Everybody was against it but me. Dr. Fauci said, had I not done that, perhaps tens of thousands, and maybe much more than that, people would have died. I was very early, very, very early. And we just you saw Bret Baier making a statement. They had a debate well into February. And not even mentioned, it wasn't even mentioned, the Democrats. We were very early. Oh, I'm the president. And you know what I just did? And you know what I just...
And by the way, when you issued the ban, the virus was already here.
Okay, and you know how many people, when I issued the ban, how many cases of virus were in the United States when I issued the ban? Do you know the number? No, how many cases? Remember I said one person. How many cases were here when I issued the ban?
But did you know?
No. You have to do your research. How many?
I did my research. On the 23rd of March, you said you knew this was going to be a pandemic.
Can I tell you what? I did know it. I did know it. All I have to do is look.
So you knew
Anybody knew it. Are you ready? How many cases were in the United States when I did my ban? How many people had died in the United States?
So do you acknowledge that you didn't think
Keep your voice down, please.
Spread?
Keep your voice down.
Did you not?
How many cases were in the United States? I did a ban where I'm closing up the entire country. How many people died?
And that's a fair point.
How many people died in the United States? And yet I closed up the country, and I believe there were no deaths, 0 deaths at the time I closed up the country. Nobody was there. And you should say thank you very much for good judgment.
This is CBS's Weijia Jiang calling out Trump for attacking China for doing the exact same thing that Trump himself was doing. His whole beef with China was that they didn't warn people earlier of the impacts, and yet he spent months downplaying the outbreak for the express purpose of insulating the economy. He disregarded memos from his own administration officials, warnings from public health officials and U.S. senators, disregarded the steps being taken in countries around the world. And instead, he pretended that the virus was some political plot to take him down, calling it a hoax akin to impeachment or the Russia probe. He said that it was totally under control, that it was no different than the flu, that it would disappear in the warm weather, that our cases would soon be down to 0, that it was contained, and for good measure, that we should absolutely buy into the stock market. And so instead of preparing this country, Trump downplayed the threat, thereby putting us in the most vulnerable position possible when the virus inevitably arrived. And look, none of this is to say that China is not at fault, because they are, without a doubt. But by that same logic, Trump's logic, so is he. You can't condemn China for downplaying the virus and absolve Donald Trump, who then proceeded to also downplay the virus. Now, Trump goes on to deflect Jiang's question about failing to warn the American people by instead bragging about his China ban, which she definitely pointed out wasn't quite the all-encompassing ban that he's playing it up to be. Because in reality, restrictions were only imposed on foreign nationals who'd been in China the last 14 days, allowing a staggering 40,000 people to continue to travel into the US from China even after the so-called ban was imposed. And because, despite Trump's fear-mongering, it's not just the Chinese who can transfer the virus, but everyone, then of course those people were able to spread it. So when Trump touts this travel ban as if it was some brilliant cure-all, it wasn't. And tens of thousands of people still arrived in the United States, presumably including those who were infected. There's also the fact that Trump is constantly bragging that no one moved faster than him on placing travel restrictions on China, which is nice revisionist history, but the truth is that not only did Italy enact a China ban 4 days earlier than the United States, but theirs was a full ban while ours had restrictions. Trump then praises himself for enacting these China restrictions before anyone died, congratulating himself for his foresight. Only A, if he was that privy to the dangers of the virus, why wouldn't he take other steps? Steps that would have been vastly more consequential. Steps like endorsing social distancing and advocating for states to impose stay-at-home orders and coordinating a nationwide testing system. But none of that happened. So while it's nice that Trump thinks he can take one half-baked step and then declare victory, that's not how this works. I'm sorry, but you don't get to preside over the steepest curve in the world, the most cases in the world, and the most deaths in the world, point to a travel ban from China that let 40,000 people in from China anyway, and throw yourself a parade. And finally, there's also the minor issue that it didn't work. We have the most cases and the most deaths on the face of the earth. So propping up this solution as if it did the trick when our situation is the worst on the planet is absurd. It's like if the house burned down and the sprinkler company showed up and says, hey, look at that, the sprinkler went off, so this was a massive success. So it's great that the sprinkler went off, but the house still burned down. But the fact is that Trump will continue to tout this travel ban because that's the only move he took, however modest it ended up being. And because he failed at testing, failed to promote social distancing early, failed to support nationwide stay-at-home orders, failed to take every step that would have been necessary to contain the spread, he will lean 100% of his energy on this one arbitrary measure, a travel ban that didn't actually ban all travel. And he will repeat this over and over and over to try and convince people that A, this was all that needed to be done, and B, that it was successful when it was neither of the two. And so at the risk of sounding like a broken record, for every time he repeats this, the rest of us should be prepared to push back, because it was his responsibility to take action to save lives, and he failed at that job.